Hey, y'all. So I was jumping on here today because I put up a discussion about looking at how to deal with this just fascism and the racism that's going on right now. And I've been having a lot of conversations with people because folks are scared. Folks are scared, they're angry, they're organizing, which is really good. And I really wanted to begin to think about what can we learn from a historic perspective about how to keep ourselves safe psychologically? Because I've been having this conversation so much with so many people for the last couple of weeks. And admittedly, and I keep saying this, for me, I'm just like, I'm not going to engage in a ton of media. I'm not going to allow the Republican media, or some people call them conservative, which is just really a lot of hateful, racist, sexist, homophobic, and anti-immigrant talk. I'm not going to allow it to um, dominate what I think about, what I talk about, and how I'm moving in the world. At the same time, I do recognize you got to know what's going on in the world, and that's why I think this week is really powerful. And despite everything that is happening, I think it's important for us to keep in the forefront, number one, what our ancestors did. We are not in a unique moment. It's from the founding of this country, from the theft of the land of the indigenous people of this country. There has been this idea that some people should have more, that some people should be worth more, and that some people should just serve others. So when you think about it, for the first people that were on this land, you got indigenous people that were the caretakers of this land. And then boats of other folks show up and they don't have enough supplies. They don't know how to deal with the land. So they don't know how to grow. They don't know how to adequately hunt. And part of what they're doing historically is you got folks that are showing up as so called pilgrims, and they come in and they're expecting other people to serve them. They're stealing the First Nations people's food, and they're expecting to be served. I think you got to look at that mentality. You got to read. That is why there's so many things about banning books and stuff. Because you have to look at the mentality. Think about that from a psychological perspective. What I look like, I show up, I roll up to your house, and I just decide, oh, number one, the house is mine now. And then I expect you to serve me. That is problematic. That is fundamentally problematic. And that is the behavior that we are looking at right now. So you got to just consider from just a basic psychological perspective, what would make people think that they should show up in somebody else's space, someone else's home, and they don't act like guests, but they act like they own it, and then they expect you to serve them? That tells you something from a psychological perspective. So if you roll that forward to everything that is going on today in this world, and this isn't just a United States issue, so we need to not focus on things that are just happening in this country. This is a global movement towards fascism, towards being problematic and harmful to other people, towards just disregarding people as human beings. If you notice, there's been this shift that has occurred. The shift from at least being just like kind and respectful to towards other people, to just enjoying being harmful. So when you think about it, I just saw something the other day, and again, I'm not like diving deep in the media. This is just happened to kind of cross my consciousness, where you've got bills being introduced to ban the children of undocumented folks from going to school. I'm like thinking about that, like, okay, so where the children gonna go if they're not in school? That's gonna create a huge issue. That's number one. But number two, so that means that you don't even see those children as human. If you don't think that they have a right to learn how to read and write, and just even thinking about the children that may be their primary meal that they get from school, you don't even see them as human. I don't see that as any different than the things that were done to my ancestors in this country. And I see that as problematic. I see those signs as signs of something psychologically wrong with people that are willing to do those things. And we need to be really clear about that. We don't need to compromise about that. We don't need to pretend like that isn't a problem. These things are absolutely a problem. So if we kind of roll past that and think about, so what do we do? What do we do? I know lots of people are online. Here I am online and having a lot of commentary, and that's good. I know, like on Tuesday when they had the whole, that sociopath doing his State of the Union address, you had 24 hours of counter programming. And that's important that you have that 24 hours of counter programming. So, in addition to having that 24 hours of counter programming, there's been boycotts that are going on. And I have been really impressed. It has made my heart really full to see the numbers of folks that would be like, yeah, Amazon may be convenient, but I'm not doing this anymore. That, going to Walmart or Target may be convenient, but they're not getting a dime of my money. And that's what I think we have to remember from an ancestral perspective, that those are the things that our ancestors did. Those times when the ancestors said, you know what, look, thinking at the Montgomery bus boycott, they were like, I'm good. It's convenient because I need to get on this bus to go to work, but I'm good. We're going to figure out something else. Those things are really powerful, and they really take us to the next level from a psychological perspective because they make us realize that we are not stuck. I see my colleague and sister friend here, so I'm going to add her to this.
Hi,
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I think I feel like I need to get some of those headphone things because your sound is just like amazing.
Yeah, it makes the sound a lot better, especially if you have something going on with your voice like I do, because it's allergy season.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the allergies. I'm blessed that here in the South I don't have them, but if I was in DC, one time I was in DC at this time and it was on. Eyes closed and puffy and everything.
Right.
So anyway, I was just doing my rambling musings about kind of what I thought about stuff, but this is actually perfect, so we can talk about this. So what I was just saying that I think is important for us to look at historically what the ancestors did and to fight, resist kind of oppression, not kind of, to resist oppression and to think about that in terms of what it does for our psychological well-being. And so I think this is a good discussion. I mean, this is a good point for you to come in because I think this moment in time, and we've talked about this offline, this moment in time is a perfect moment in time for historians because you can tell us kind of the backdrop of where this goes, where this has come from, this behavior politically, where does it come from, and then how our ancestors resisted. So I want to start out by just asking you if you look at this moment in time, um, how would you compare it to other moments in history? Like, give us an example of when this kind of behavior, where you got this uprising of white racism, homophobia, maybe not, I don't know, maybe not homophobia, because I don't know if there's ever been a mass outcry about that, but just this mass focus on oppressing and dominating people. Can you talk a bit about that from a historic perspective?
Well, I mean, I think I probably sound like a broken record at this point. In that, um, when I started to teach the United States History Survey, I could see patterns,
Mm,
so that whenever there is a period when there were more civil liberties, there was more social justice that was developing within the United States, there was a period of backlash that followed. So, for those who want to track it, if you look at what happened following Reconstruction, so the Civil War happens. uh, you know, s- chattel slavery is made illegal, right? Um, and Reconstruction is, you know, put in place to try and, as it says, reconstruct um, the South in particular, so that American society is more equitable, at least if it doesn't afford full citizenship rights for African Americans, that, you know, African Americans are at least not subject to the chattel bondage, right? But then we see the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and, you know, we can go on, right? I don't want to get it too much in the weeds, but to more directly answer your question, um, that lasts generally about 12 years, Reconstruction. And we see during Reconstruction between 1865 and 1877, uh, gathering storm clouds of pushback, right? And historians call that redemption, quote unquote. And you see that redemption and then that rollback of Reconstruction by 1877. And then a little bit more than 20 years later, in African American history, we have what we call the Nader. And that's
And
a low point. Am I getting
wait,
feedback? I hear feedback.
no, no, I'm
Okay.
no. What you said? They call it what?
The Nader, Nadir.
Okay, the nadir. Okay, got
Uh-huh.
it.
And that means the low point.
Okay.
And so a lot of people track that low point with the passage of Plessy v. Ferguson. So this solidifying into American law this separate but equal doctrine that would define Jim Crow. I mean, in particular at the federal level, right?
Mhm.
Because we know that black codes, right, um, existed on the local level to restrict African Americans, but you know, it reaches the national level, right, the Supreme Court level, by 1896. So then you see African Americans, we always resisted, we always organized to push back. And I think the next time we have a major inflection point is with the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. And, you know, depending on what you look at and who you ask, um, there are different starting points for the civil rights movement. But most people agree it starts by in earnest by 1955, 1954, 1955, and it
Mm.
runs for about 10 years, and then the tone changes and leadership changes. There's some shifts, and then Black Power lasts for 10 years from about 65 until about 75. But you see, if you just look at what the FBI, for instance, is doing.
Mhm.
And then this concept of the quote unquote silent majority. You see pushback, you see backlash. Um, what do I think there's a sector of younger people who are younger than me who call it clapback, right? You get this clapback,
Mhm.
immediate comeback. And I think I didn't get the idea that people understood that as a pattern within United States history. And I would always say, I know I didn't, because the first African American history textbook that I had assigned to me, which was in undergrad, was John Hope Franklin's From Slavery to Freedom.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I have this mental picture, you know, from slavery to freedom, you know,
Mhm.
point A to point B. Um, but once I started to teach the US history survey, I thought, wow, I need to change my mental picture, because it's not an arc or a line or you know upward trajectory. To me, it's like a like, you know how there's this song, reggae song, that I like, and it's, you know, two steps forward, one step backward,
Mm-hmm.
stepping out of Babylon. You know, but if you listen to the lyrics, they're saying we're going onward ever, backward never. Not you know, that's the biggest idea, keep hope. But you know, it's the drunk man's gate. It's the flight of the bumblebee. It's not there's not a straight, there hasn't been a straight path or an arc of a moral, the moral arc of a universe bending neatly toward justice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, William Jelani Cobb at one point described it as an EKG readout. I had to stop using that analogy for for my students because few of the, you know, college students have had an EKG.
Right, right. So
So they're
don't
like,
get
"What
that,
is that?"
but
Well,
yeah.
yeah, but I think more can understand you know, the flight of the bumblebee, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how proper it is to describe it as a drunk man's gait. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's so yes, I agree. We can look at what went well and what didn't go well, missteps, triumphs of our ancestors to see how they deal with this. Sad to say, and I hate to sound like a cynic, but this cyclical nature of you know, the worst aspects of what some people think America is, which is a highly racialized um, nationalism that is, uh, you know, driven by capitalism, particular racial capitalism, that is highly exclusive and the opposite of diverse and inclusive and equitable.
So I'm thinking, and I want to kind of talk domestically, but then I actually want to expand this conversation internationally to international fascism. Um, so from looking at that, so when we think look at history and see the clapback when we make progress, let's take it away from the clapback and look at what our ancestors did. What did our ancestors do to resist? To to keep going forward, like you said, forward ever, backward never. I mean, so how did they keep going forward, and how did they specifically address that clapback? Because I know they wasn't just sitting around like shaking in their boots.
Oh no, no. So I think if I had to say it in a you know, I don't want to say simplistic, but you know, it's a simpler manner. They organized,
Hmm.
um, and organizing could take a spectrum of forms, right? From working together. I think at the very least, it takes acknowledging, recognizing, seeing our commonalities, seeing that we have to work together, right?
Hmm.
Or that it'll benefit us. We don't have to. We don't have to, as they say, we don't have to do nothing but stay black and die. But you know, like, and a lot of us not staying black, right? So, you know, but that it in this at particular at this juncture is going to benefit us to work together, right? But then we would need to do so in an organized fashion, and
Hmm.
from organizing not just in a psychological way, in a social way, right? Socially organizing, we got to have an economic foundation for that. We have to have institutional expressions, and a lot of this stuff you know, I wish other people had come, but maybe people are listening and can go into the chat and talk back. But it's my opinion that while we may galvanize people and have certain conversations online, I think a lot of this has to be done offline.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I think the majority of the work has to be done offline.
Mhm.
And I don't know. Oh, okay. Let me ask you this. I'm thinking that the work needs to be done offline. It needs to be in smaller groups. What are your thoughts about that? Of working in smaller groups and then collaborating, as opposed to trying to work in like these massive groups with a bunch of people you don't know.
Mm. I think it depends on the situation. I do not think a whole bunch of fragmented small groups will work.
Okay.
I was thinking about this, not long ago, sometime at some point this week, when I said, I wonder how it will play out that on the one hand, we're getting data that says fewer of us are going to church, just fewer people, not just African Americans,
Oh, just
but
overall, yeah.
few people in general are going to
Mm-hmm.
church.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has some unintended consequences. And I saw that some of the unintended consequences have been, we don't get the same kind of quality music, right? The music is taking a different form. Uh, uh,
Interesting. Okay, I could see that, but I hadn't thought about that before.
yeah,
Interesting.
because yeah, people like well, I can't remember where I was reading or viewing this, and they were like, "Oh, where are the girl groups like, back in the day? You had the Supremes, and you even had, SWV, and they just named all these girl groups, or women groups, but you know, then they're saying everything is, sort of canned and auto-tuned. A lot of what we get is canned and auto-tuned, and you do get singular talents, but what happened, like, you know, post Destiny's Child, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things people are speculating is that the sort of degrading of music programs in public schools, plus the decrease in church going is impacting the music.
Mm-hmm.
That's one area. So when I saw Pastor Jamal Bryant of New Birth in Atlanta calling for a boycott, calling on his parishioners to
Mm-hmm.
boycott Target, and then how, at least in the on my the algorithm, what the algorithm was pushing to me, that people on social media who weren't even in the Atlanta area, didn't go to New Birth, or even they weren't even Christians or churchgoers, were, sort of talking back to that charge. I thought the church was such a centerpiece to the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
How, if s- social media for us has become both a liability and an asset, what could be our next steps? Like, where do we need to be, um, in terms of moving together, right? With a common charge, a common purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know a lot has changed from my generation to, let's just say, my parents' generation to my generation, and then my generation to my children's generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I write about, I think you know that well, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if the audience knows that I write about Black nationalism, Black power, and one of the topics I have written about is Ifa, particularly via Oyatunji Village and the formation of Oyatunji Village in South Carolina.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, okay, I know Ifa had, or African traditional religion, religious perspectives, practices have a following. So I wonder if there's a way to combine smaller, like egg bays and things like that, for a common purpose in terms of social justice and political advancement, and
So
even maybe economic.
So the way that that looks like, so it does happen, and this is where it makes a difference. It made a difference for me getting out of the literature and out of the writing and actually going to Nigeria. So the way that it looks in Nigeria is they have something called an Isheshe festival. And Isheshe just means like the tradition. It's like going back to the tradition. And in the Isheshe festival, it is different egbe's or different communities, translating to churches that come together and they celebrate the Orisha. And there's an economic pooling there. There is a social pooling there. But then also the thing that, and I don't know if this has happened historically because I don't have that context, so y'all forgive me. But currently, part of the reason they do it is to encourage the young people to embrace Ifa, to resist the racism of missionaries that came and told them that their traditions were evil, and to resist and push against these ideas that indigenous Yoruba spiritual practices are problematic. So it is a political formation. Also, what you will see in Nigeria, which I'm sure I haven't even told you about this. This is really interesting. Um, the traditional communities come together because they have, you know how like churches, denominations of churches, like you have the Southern Baptist Convention or the Methodists get together. So the same thing actually exists in Ifa. So they have an organized body that is very organized in Nigeria. And you will see signs. There are sacred places that you can go in Nigeria, and there's a sign that says, the law says that you cannot come in here, you can't touch this, you can't destroy these things. So they've organized around, and I remember seeing this, and I actually might have a picture of it because I was very surprised. It's like, according to the law, da, da, da. And so I was asking about it, and it was like basically people coming here because they may be Christian or they may be Muslim, and they desecrate our sacred areas. And so we got laws passed that if they come and desecrate our sacred areas, they're going to jail. So there's political action. I mean, to your point, there is that. And the same thing, I see that people are doing that now in Atlanta. So there is actually an Nesheshe festival that's coming up in August here in Atlanta. And that's part of what the goal is kind of pulling people together. So yeah, I mean, that definitely exists. Um,
I mean, I
I
think I'm sorry to interrupt, but I, I
go
did
ahead.
I did want to address it. I think it's really important because you're much more involved with that than I am, and I really hope that maybe you could take the lead on this, stressing that policy part is extremely important.
Mm,
And there's some aspect of that I hope moves beyond just convening and gets to focus on moving the needle in terms of policy.
hmm
Because, like you're saying, when you said that, at first I was trying to understand what you were saying. Is this, there's a law that says you can't desecrate this, but look, that's the reason why we're still living with so many Confederate monuments.
right.
No, it's in some cases, it's state law or what have you that you cannot remove those.
hmm
And so we got to move the needle on some policy, and then we have to get people to understand. You got to vote. You got to vote so that you'll elect people who have the will to help defend us against what's going on at the top levels in federal government, because this is this is worrisome. Because you said we talked offline, and so I did some studying and reading more, and I'm worried. But yeah, definitely, mm, policy and institutional expressions. So I was watching like the Essence Awards, um,
hmm
and Anjanou Ellis got an award. And when she gave her speech, she said, it was really good. I loved her speech. Then there was one point where she said, and and a lot of y'all are going to get mad with me, and I'm going to have to say it, but not feminism. Feminism is not going to get us there. And I understand why people say that, but she didn't say what would get us there very
Mhm.
clearly. And I really hope that we have some honest discussions about the fact that um, whatever is going to get us there, it cannot just rest in the realm of spiritual or in the realms of the arts and culture and religion or even economics, arts, culture, and
Mhm.
religion, right? But it's got to have policy expressions, political representation, and institutional expressions. And that's what feminism has, that womanisms, whether they're, Africana womanisms or just womanism, Alice Walker's womanism, that hasn't happened as far as I know. Like I can't point to a piece of womanist legislation, and that's where we are now. And I just hope that we can move beyond. Um, well, we can move in that direction. Let me just say that.
Okay, now you maybe want to say something against that. I mean, I would push against that because if we look at Lady Phillips' work, I mean, her conversation and definition of womanism, she's just like talking about how, as the women of African ancestry, we've historically organized. When you think of someone like Akeisha Lance Bottoms, I don't know that she would necessarily label herself as a womanist, but we're in the midst of COVID, and you've got all of this racism that's coming down, and these insane policies that are focused on capitalism and dollars that are designed to kill people and try to force people back to work. And she clearly stood um, in her ground at the local level to say, this is not, we're not doing that. I don't care what y'all doing. But she would say clearly, Atlanta's not doing that. And I would think that that is policy. That is a womanist action towards policy. I think if we think about it, Shirley Chisholm, that she is definitely kind of an embodiment of womanist policy. When we look at, is it Karen Handel, um, California? I should know. I'm from California. Yeah. Um, and she comes in office. I mean, having a problem now, but comes in office and is like, homelessness is a problem, and we're going to address this. Like, we're not going to just allow people. I mean, when you go to California, I don't know whenever you've been to Los Angeles, it is a moral sin, the level of homelessness that's there. And so for her to come up and be like, this is something that's going to be a priority, we are going to address this issue, I see those as acts of womanism. But that's just me. I Let's do broad, and you're going to say, "Oh, I'm not a, I don't do world history." But I was asking you some questions yesterday, and I really want us to think about this more from a broad perspective, because I think people use the word fascism or dictatorship in this country, and because we so-called live in a democracy, then people are just saying these things, and they're not really. It doesn't really have teeth behind what they're saying. But if we look at places, to me, historically, that have had fascist dictatorships, if we look at a Germany, World War I, World War II, if we look at Italy, if we look at Argentina, look at there's one more that I'm blanking on. We could go Turkey. There are lots of places around the world where this kind of fascist, controlling, hateful commentary. Um, oh, I said Karen Handel. I didn't mean Karen Handel. Yes. Why you didn't say it out loud? I meant Karen. You just said it,
No,
y'all.
I have it on mute, and I couldn't say it fast enough, so I didn't want to interrupt. So I just
I was on the roll. Scratch that. Scratch that. She's right. I was saying the wrong name. I'm talking about the lady in California, not the racist here. But going back to like, so you've got all these countries around the world where you've got these dictatorships. If we look at the Philippines, the Khmer Rouge, where's that? Um,
Cambodia.
Cambodia, thank you. And we look at like the outcome of what these dictators did, um, it didn't go so well for them, for lots of them. I mean, people absolutely got harmed, but it also didn't go well for the people that were in control. And I wonder if you can give us like a historical context about that, because I don't think that people are really thinking about the fact that this has happened so much in so many countries globally, and that it never turns out well for those people that are trying to oppress. If you just go back to, let's think about the French Revolution. You and I were talking about that a couple of months ago. Look at the French Revolution. If you're just trying to hog up everything, that's not going to go well for you. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, we were talking about that, and you said that, and I think you're saying that from the perspective of a psychologist who's looking at somebody who's, I think, as you say, a sociopath, um,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but I'm looking at, when you challenged me to look at history through from the lens of fascist tyrants, dictators, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
a different perspective than I've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, mm, no, okay, so let me speak to what you're saying. No, it doesn't go well for them because the way they usually operate, one, a part of being a fascist strongman type is that you one talking about leadership, you rule with fear,
Right.
right? You rule with fear. And so of course there are going to be some people who not going to be scared. Right? What's that song? I ain't never scared. Right?
I ain't never scared. What?
Right? Right. And so, and a lot of times then the next tactic is to you know use violence, raw naked violence against them, encourage surveillance. So not only state surveillance, but encourage civilians to surveil each other
Mm-hmm.
and turn each other in. And then you weaponize the laws against the masses and
Mm-hmm.
the people who may be an enemy. And to be a strong man, you come out of the box getting rid of people who may challenge you or expose you. So when I did the extra research, I was looking at um, this particular perspective, and I have to do more when I get time because I'm also writing a book at this time on something totally different, to see how beyond the like sort of quick and
Mm-hmm.
dirty, superficial look, how you know true this is not my area, right? And I'm not looking at primary source documents or whatever. But my understanding is that when Stalin took power, um all
I
the
forgot about
generals,
Stalin. Yeah.
yeah, all the generals around him were dead, after a certain amount of time, not long. And that there's a pattern. Like if you and I were to do a project and we were to lay out people, Hitler, um, Stalin, uh, you brought up Caesar,
Oh, yeah, Caesar. Yeah.
Samuel Doe in Liberia.
Uh,
You said
Mugabe. I forgot
Mugabe,
Mugabe.
Pol
Yeah.
Pot,
Pol Pot. Yeah.
um,
Um,
Francisco Franco, and we could go on and on, right?
where's Francisco Franco at?
In Spain, fascist
Got
Spain.
it. Okay.
Uh-huh. Um,
What was the guy in Argentina? Um,
gosh, I was about to say something that was totally wrong. It was it slipped my mind. I'll think of it in a minute. But that if we look at them and we track just what happens to the best and brightest of the people around them, particularly before they came to power, who were in power before them, and help, like they came to power through their networks, those people were disappeared. So basically my point is you're creating a lot of Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. Is that what you're talking about in Argentina?
Um, I was just looking it up. Um,
Am I wrong? Pinochet? Or is it the
Jorge Rafael Videla.
oh, uh no.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is dictators all
Mhm.
around the world. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so they rule with fear, and they create a lot of enemies. And so yeah, I think that's why you're saying they don't last long. So it's their tactics. One thing that they do is I was looking at like all these case studies, right? And when you look at Idi Amin in Uganda,
Yeah. Horrible.
right? So, okay, so all of them rule masses of people in the countries that they were ruling over by scapegoating other people for the country's problems.
Right.
So, um, it was foreigners in Uganda,
Mm-hmm.
and in particular the East Asian population there. So he scaped, they were scapegoated, and there could be a grievance that's a legitimate grievance that's magnified, or grievances can be totally um just made up, right? Manufactured is what I wanted to say. But then when that goes away, so what happens is a lot of the East Asians, as we have seen, right? In the particularly colonial and post-colonial world, they develop a lot of businesses. And so for the average Ugandan who's, African descended, native born, they're saying like they're dominating our economy. So when Amin turns out the agents and tells them get out, then he's able to appease the people who he's dominating by fear, by saying, "Hey, come get these businesses." So
Mm-hmm.
a part of what they're doing is like making themselves the like a person of the people, a people
Mm-hmm.
person, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And saying like I'm helping solve this big problem, and one of the problems is all these foreigners coming in and just like exploiting us. And so
Mm-hmm.
I got rid of the Indians for y'all, the South Asians, and I gave y'all their businesses. But a lot of them, as we're seeing play out in real time, a lot of these schemes are harebrained, because
Completely harebrained.
right. And
They're
so
not well thought out.
not
The
well thought.
consequences are not well thought out.
Right. So there's
Um,
going to be another problem, which is what
right.
speaking to your assertion, right?
Right.
So then the following problem with the mean was that, well, the people weren't prepared. They weren't educated and trained to really
The
run the
businesses.
businesses. And so then the economy suffers greatly.
Mm-hmm.
So another common tactic then pattern is, okay, well, we got rid of that scapegoat. Let's start a war. And so,
And then so can we jump to Germany with that?
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I wanted to finish this
Oh,
one
I'm
because
sorry. Go ahead.
this is what really got me. Because
Uh-huh.
I'm more familiar with Germany under Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember Idi Amin vaguely from things that were saying when being said when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he takes power a few years of just a few short years before I was born, and so this stuff is going on as I'm a little kid growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back on it as an adult with opinions and all this kind of stuff that are much more informed and sophisticated, I was like, for real? Are you for real, sir? The war he picked was with their neighbor to the south, Tanzania.
Mhm.
And they were like, Tanzania wasn't bothering nobody. They weren't bothering Uganda. And so that the idea was that the Ugandan army, standing army, had sophisticated weapons, the latest weaponry, but that for many years they had been picking on unarmed Ugandan citizens. They hadn't been, you know, training for
Mhm.
a well trained armed s- uh, uh, military force. So the Tanzanian People's Army, when when Uganda invaded Tanzania and Tanzania hit back, Uganda couldn't withstand it. And
Mhm.
so for a while, they just had Idi Amin on the run. And so Idi Amin turns to the Ugandan people and is like, protect me. And they're like, don't you remember you used to kill 300,000 of us at a time because you wanted to, because you didn't want people to rise up against you.
Mhm.
It was like a preemptive thing for you. Like, it's too many of y'all over there. Just get rid of some of them.
Mhm.
So why would we be protecting you? No, sir, right? And so to your point, because of the tactics that strongmen like this use utilize, then of course they create all these problems from themselves and these enemies. But the downside to me is that folks was living on in captivity under these tyrants for years, decades sometimes.
Mhm.
Um and then now that I have am older and I have an awareness of scale, 300,000 people at a time, with Stalin, and the scheme that was developed to have the Ukrainians to feed the Soviet Union, like Ukrainian peasants, and it didn't go well, so people were starving. And
Wait,
it
what
was
do you
like,
mean? Wait a minute, hold on.
yeah,
You we're not
yeah,
history people, so wait a minute. What was
just
it again?
okay. So let to make it succinct, Stalin, uh, under Stalinism, right?
Mhm.
Because some of the people who I interviewed for the current book were staunch Stalinists.
Mhm.
And so I was like, "Ah, how are they staunch Stalinists? Because I thought Stalin was one of
Evil?
the one of the most ruthless. Like,
Yeah,
and
evil.
so right. So one of the things that you have to he becomes the top leadership in the Soviet Union. And so under his administration, they have to develop like and the way the economy is going to go and the like, right? And it's a socialist economy. It's under communism. So one of the things that plays out with the USSR and Cambodia is okay. So no, if we're going to say we have a less class stratified country, who's going to do like the actual agricultural work, that the basic agricultural work that feeds the people,
Oh, so they were saying that the Ukrainian people should do the agricultural work to feed the Russians.
to feed the yeah
Got it. Okay, no, I didn't know that
Soviet.
part. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
I
it
know
was
that there's that historical tension between Ukraine and Russia, but I didn't know that that
right.
was part of it.
Yes, okay, yes. And so it was Ukrainian peasants, and it did not work well, and it led to mass starvation in the Ukrainian region. So part of what these guys do, these dictators do, is they control the press. They control the flow of information. And so the way the press was controlled under Stalin, friendly reporters and the like were let in, and they were shown the best of socialism, particularly as a counterpoint for the Great Depression
Hmm.
and what capitalism could do, and not shown that there was a whole region over here of very poor people with millions of people just starving to death.
Okay, so then I want to push you forward.
Mhm.
So, because people can go and read on their own
Mhm.
now. So, I want to push you forward. So, what do we learn if we look at what the people did? If we look at Uganda, if we look at Russia, if we look at, again, I want to bring in Hitler. I think we need to bring in Mussolini because I told you my comments about Mussolini
Yeah.
um, in Italy. If we're looking at these different dictators and their behavior, we know that they all did the same thing. They done read in the same playbook of psychopathy. So they're sociopaths. They're doing the same things. They ain't come up with no new tricks. What did the people do to resist historically?
So one of the things that I see, well, one of the things that I saw is that the people were they could be a formidable and dangerous force.
Mm.
But I think now this to me is getting into speculation,
Okay.
but part of what has to happen with the people is that they have to be educated and aware. So they have to be educated about how they're being manipulated. So they have to be educated that this stuff follows a certain pattern, right? This
Hmm.
how we get to a dictator, how we get to a fascist, right? A fascist state. And and then they have to move, right? They have to resist.
So, but that's my point. I think that's my point in Jamila is that they did resist. So I
Mhm.
don't necessarily agree that people have to be educated. I think they can be. I mean, so push against that.
Mhm.
But I think that certainly there are some people that are going to have their eyes closed and they don't understand why there's a boycott. They don't understand what the problem is. You know, these good people are treating us good. We don't need to do anything different. I think even when people are not educated, if we believe in the humanity of people on this planet, you know when you've done wrong or when someone's doing you wrong, even if you don't have education around that. And when I'm saying education, I'm not talking about necessarily formal
Yeah,
education.
me either. I want to
Um,
be clear about that. Yeah.
but I think, I mean, they may not be able to articulate it from a historic perspective, but they know when something is wrong. Everybody from the peasant to the professor knows internally when they are not being treated well, and I think that that's historically what you've seen is that people rise up. Um, I'm talking about this from a psychological perspective. Is that there's only so far that you can push anybody, even the most passive person that doesn't want to, rock the boat. They just don't follow the rules, even when the rules are unfair. So far that you can push them.
So I you would know that the psychology of it more than me. But um so one, the narrative that is taught about Germany between the world wars,
Hmm.
and I think the way I teach the US history survey is suggested when we get into talking about why the United States has aid programs and other international programs like the Peace Corps,
Hmm.
like USAID, USAID, and the Peace Corps
Hmm.
and stuff. Um, and that's it because when there's a hardship, when there's a crisis, when people feel desperate, when they feel their way of life is, eroding under their feet like sand,
Hmm.
um, they do look for someone who's strong and seems as if they're confident about getting bringing about the changes that they want to see happen, or making things, putting them back the way they think that they should be.
Hmm.
So I think, to me, what I was observing was that a lot of times people were in deeper than they thought they were before they realized, oh wait, this man crazy.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think that's
Yeah.
when you take a Hitler, someone like that, because he's, you know, promoting the what is that when he promoted like the ideal person, um, the
The
blonde, blue hair, blue eye. It doesn't matter, but you
Aryan.
know,
You
yeah, I
talking about
mean,
the Aryan prototype?
yeah. So the Aryan prototype, and he
Yeah.
don't look like an Aryan, and you got someone like that sociopath Elon Musk who talking about helping to push these efforts to push foreigners out, and he a foreigner.
Right.
You got those kinds of things, and I think what ends up happening is you're right that people they hold on to the ideology. We want to take this country back. All these people, and they're doing all these things and trying to do this. We're going to take this country back. And it's not until there's something that really impacts their lives when you're like, well, wait a minute, did that mean my good federal government job with the benefits and the retirement is going to be gone? That it wakes people up. That's a common thing, and so that's why I'm saying I don't even know that it necessarily needs to be education, any kind of formal thing that people need. It's when their livelihood is on the line, then they begin to see like, wait, this person is a problem. And then also the thing you got to remember too, one other point, when you think about it, it was only 30 something percent of eligible voters that voted in this last election. So it was not like this massive number of people. When you look at someone like Hitler, the point that I was saying to you the other day, when you look at him, we got to remember his own people were attempting to take him out. His own people. So they look like the it's a term that they use. It's like not on it's
He's
on a
not
typical.
Aryan.
It is Aryan, but they were like basically this is the ideal prototype, and then you would use this language. I can't
He-
think of what it is.
Heron folk.
No,
Heron folk. It wasn't Heron folk.
it'll
Okay.
come to me in a second. I see some people listening. Y'all know what it is. Put in the chat for me. But that's, I mean, so like this prototype of this is what the ideal person would look like, and people, and then the Jewish people are the ones that are stealing your money. That's why you don't have a job. That's why I didn't get into art school. So let's go steal all their art and all that other kind of foolishness. And you distract people with this kind of thing. These people are taking your money, taking your jobs, taking your opportunities, like you said, and then you start harming them. But then when people look up, they realize that they are being harmed. And there's only so far that you can do with that before it becomes a problem. So, where I see it is if you don't have no sense and you put someone who is a sociopath like you, who also says admittedly they have autism, so they don't have any kind of emotional connection, they don't care that you don't have no job. They don't care that your family retirement savings is going to get wiped out. And so they're just doing these things across the board. And what my argument is, what I think you're going to see happening, because these fools ain't even been in control for for 6 months. That would be 6 months. What you will see over time is you will see them begin to implode from within. And people are so running scared. They are so busy listening to the news. They are so busy focusing on all of the executive orders that they can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see the 50% of the executive orders that have been dismissed. They're focused on, well, they're trying to figure out how they can get rid of federal judges. Okay, That may be true that they're trying to figure that out. At the same time, if we look if we look at these behaviors, what do you think is going to happen if they start coming after federal judges across the board? You think that all them judges going to sit there and just be like, all right, that's cool?
I think if we don't take a holistic approach to the resistance, that yeah, I think that it can happen faster than we realize, because that is also in the playbook, is to get control of the mechanisms of the law. And uh who dismissed all the judges? I want to say it was Saddam Hussein. It was either Saddam. It was probably multiple of these global dictators. But yeah, this getting rid of all the judges and then installing judges that will do your bidding is in the strongman tyrant's playbook.
Right.
And like um sort of discrediting science and dismantling science, which is also what I
Mhm.
see going on. So
Mhm.
I think we don't need to underestimate that. Yes, what you're saying happens, but it could be a matter of decades of, like you're saying, suffering. Uh,
But
if
this
we
is
don't.
but this is where I'm pushing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is where I'm
Mhm,
pushing. Part of the reason that it can be that is because it's the focus on that. So the goal here is to talk about historical patterns of resistance, and
mhm.
we keep sliding down into what this could mean and the dangers of this and the problems with that. That's part of the psychological warfare. The more powerful
Well,
piece
yeah, I
is,
get that, but what
mhm,
I'm saying is,
go ahead.
so when the judges don't, if when the federal judges don't acquiesce, what does that look like? Because I felt as if when they were saying, "Oh, these workers need to go," and Elon Musk was telling them to go, that workers were, gonna be like, "No, I'm not going," and some did, but they would get security, the police in the area to, that's if it's a federal, building, to walk them out, block the doors. They would lock them out of their their computers, with passwords and things like that. And so I'm like, I think people are looking for, like, how would a judge resist if what the sort of angel, which we really know is the opposite, but the heroic angel is an archetype of the kind of people that strong men put around them. And Elon Musk, for as long as as long as he don't turn on Trump, which I was hoping that he would, or Trump would turn on him, if people people are going around asking for money to put up billboards showing that Trump, like, looking up to Elon as if he's the president, or he's the real king, right? And maybe enough of that will get to Trump's ego for Trump to turn on him. But I noticed that, for as slow as Trump seems, he's a wily tyrant type. And so he did get this Elon Musk dude behind him, who he's not, he also is, but he has his hands on.
And to be like,
Okay. But I'm asking you, get I
what
understand
does that look
the
like?
general. Yes, what does it look like? That's all
What
I'm
does
asking
that?
you. What
Yeah.
does it look like?
So,
What does it look
and
like?
what I was asking you is from a historic perspective. So I see people commenting in the chat. What does it look like for you? So what does that look like is that 50% of what this fool has written down and said that he's going, that all these executive orders they have thrown out. That's what it looks like in the courts. What it looks like, I mean, that's already happened. What it looks like is, though some people have left and some people have lost their job, then you start to see these fractures where you got the governor somewhere in the Midwest, I think it was Kansas, I don't, They like, oh well, we wholeheartedly support this administration and the GOP, but we don't agree with this with these decisions about the jobs. So you start to see those fissures. What I can tell you is, from a psychological perspective, there will be a break between the two of them. What people seem to forget is the Elon Musk of the first administration was that other sociopath, that the pillow guy, the My Pillow guy. We ain't heard nothing about him. That was the first person. And then before the My Pillow guy was the other guy that was talking about he wasn't going to testify to Congress, and they held him in contempt. You like we're missing these things
Right. Yeah,
because
that's what I was asking you about. Okay.
yeah, because we
Yeah,
keep
because I said I didn't. He got rid of. I don't even remember the
banning
dude's name. Not. Yes,
banning.
I thought about Bannon, but I'm talking about his vice president.
Oh yeah, and that dude. It
Yeah. Like
um So what my point is I'm not saying what you're saying isn't correct. What I'm saying is I think that kind of conversation is the point, is that exactly what a sociopath wants you to do is they want to set the agenda what you are talking about. I see Muses and Bloom put a comment in the chat and was talking about, it says, I fear the severity of the consequences of fascism this time around will be far more severe. Yes, I agree. And what I am saying is, we also have power. If we think about going back to what you said at the beginning, um, you were talking about the churches and the significant impact of the church within the civil rights movement. When people totally dismiss that Ida B. Wells was heavily involved in the church, all of the work that she was doing around the Unitarian Church. All her activism was coming out of that space, but we don't necessarily think of her as Christian forward, but she was very Christian forward, and she was in activist circles that were church related activist circles. We have power. So if we stop focusing on what they are doing out of the sociopath playbook, then I think we can start really recognizing, oh, these are the things that we can do. We have power in terms of, you have power in terms of history, because you can say, okay, y'all, this is the playbook. I think that's the great stuff to put online. This is the playbook historically. This is what we see. We saw it in Italy. We saw it in France. We saw it in Germany. We saw it in Argentina. We've seen it. We've seen this over and over again. We've seen this in Russia. Um, but this is what the people did. This is the way that they resisted. This is the way that the ancestors resisted. When we think about it in terms of Ida B. Wells, going back to her, Black people had nothing. They had less than nothing that compared to what we have now. We, even the poorest of the poor wasn't like the way that the folks during Ida B. Wells' time were. And those people were like, we're not staying in the South. They packed on wagons and walked. I think that's powerful. For them to be like, y'all not gonna treat me any old kind of way. What we will do is we will walk away from here. That's what we have to remember. I'm sorry. I know I'm getting excited, but I'm like, screw that. Screw that. They've been bringing it for the longest. We have always had power. It didn't matter if they had shackles on us. There was always somebody that had a little extra knife somewhere. They had some ground up glass. They had something that they could do to resist. I refuse to focus on them. I refuse to focus on what they are, their agenda. What I am saying is that at every moment until I leave this earth and go to the realm of the ancestors, I have the power to resist, and every single one of us do.
yeah, I no, I didn't doubt that. I thought you wanted me to. I thought you wanted me to outline and give details of what happened before. And when we got into the judges, because I do, I know that there have been injunctions and some of the executive orders have been overturned. But the thing that I just want to stress is that we gotta, you say this all the time, play chess, not checkers. And I think sometimes we look at that, sort of that imagery of the arc of the arc of the moral universe, or the moral arc of the universe. I can't remember how it goes, how the quote goes. But as sort of a straight trajectory. But we got to look at, okay, so what's the move after that move? So what's I can see, well, they're just not going to abide by the judge's orders. And so then what? And like you're saying, there's been this, okay, so we're just looking at removing federal judges, and that way we
Mhm.
don't have that inconvenience. So then what's the next move after that? And so I do think a lot of people will resist in terms of being federal judges. But if you have somebody on your team who has all these hackers, and you have the levers of power to block them out of their systems or whatever, then what do? um and I do think we can think of a solution. I do think a lot of this conversation has to be had offline, and we need to
Mhm.
figure out how to connect and have these conversations offline. But I also think that I know what you're saying. We shouldn't get bogged down in
Mhm.
spiraling into the negatives, but I think we do need to strategize. So we shouldn't ignore the details.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. I just realized it's at 1:20 and I got somewhere to be at 2 o'clock. I'm about to be late. But I want to say something. Muses in Bloom was saying my concern is tied to alienation, like basically individualism, and how do we get away from that? How do we move away from that? The thing that I think you have to realize in terms of just, I agree that there is a lot of individualism that is happening. What you will realize as a survival, an inherent survival mechanism, is that the more that you experience oppression, you will automatically start moving towards other people. I think you got to have faith in human beingness, just like you got to have faith when you think about French was it King French Revolution. What was it? The King of France.
Oh, sorry, you got me doing. You have me doing a lot. Sorry, I'm over here
Okay,
trying to sign in and talk with musings and bloom. But go ahead, just because you're gonna be late.
no,
Don't
no,
get
no,
bogged
but I
down in
mean,
details. Okay.
okay, but I can't think. Is it Henry? No, it wasn't Henry. I can't think of the king that
Is
they
it? Is
beheaded.
Oh, Louis?
Louis, thank you,
Yeah.
King Louis, that they beheaded. Part of the issue that was happening is that the people were being oppressed. The people were starving. The people, I mean, when you get, there's only so far you can take that stuff. And so what I am saying is, from a space of human beingness, you're going to recognize that people are going to come together because they ain't gonna have no choice. From a space of resistance, people are automatically going to start to resist, because it is not within basic human nature to just let somebody walk all over you. So you will, so what they are doing right now, which I think we are failing to elevate, is you are literally politicizing the next generation of revolutionaries. The
I,
people,
oh yeah,
the
yeah.
people that would have been asleep. If you would just give people like basic jobs so they can, take care of their family, buy a little starter house and, go on vacation, they would literally be able to control the population better than what they're doing right now. That's how you know they're sociopaths. Anyway, I gotta go. Thank y'all for listening. I am
And
so
it's Louis.
sorry. I gotta
You
run.
got me doing a lot. It's Louis the 16th. I was like, I know it's a Louis. You remember
Louis
having
the
a
16th.
Louis?
Louis the
Yes.
16th.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I can only multitask so much these days.
Louis the 16th had complete control. Complete. Louis the 16th, that fool had so much control. He had some courtiers that would come along and they would watch him use the bathroom in the morning. That's how much control they had. That's bizarre. And at one point, the people, it was like, we've had enough. They did that to Mussolini. That we've had enough. We've seen it over and over and over again. Yes, things are bad. Yes, things can get worse. I have faith in the people. I gotta go, y'all. Thank you for this conversation. Take care.